of Marblehead Bank.
Good afternoon. Is this okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, good. I'm excited to be here today, given an opportunity as my chairman of the board, Tom, will tell you, and one of our directors, John, will tell you I'm a very humble guy. I don't like talking in front of people.
Or something.
Or something, right? Just put a microphone in my hand, right? So, no, I joined Dakota in loving the history of things, and loving the ability to go back into the archives and dig things up. And we did find some pretty interesting things, some old banks and some old articles and some pretty cool pictures about the old Marblehead Bank. And we'll share a little bit of that with you today. Our program today is going to be sort of like twofold. We'll start out with the history of the bank and how the bank interacts a little bit with Lakeside. And then we'll talk a little bit about how a small bank like the Marblehead Bank can still survive in this big bank environment and all of the regulatory environments and the economy that we have to deal with. It won't be very long, but I think it'll be fun for us. To kick things off, though, I want to start out with, I want to change this here. Let's see, let's get on that one. Oh, you don't want to stop at that one? Okay. All right. I love this thing. This is my very first PowerPoint I ever put together.
Congratulations.
That's what my kids say. Dad, you're coming into the 21st century. I can't believe that. Where's that Kodak camera that you had? It's in my office. All right. So anyways, back in 1991, the village of Marblehead had their 100th anniversary. And one of the books are up there on the table also. And we're going to be donating one of these books to the archives at the Heritage Society here. And in it has a lot of articles about the different places, the lighthouse, the fire department, the different churches, the different businesses that were involved in Marblehead in the last 100 years. They had a really, really nice article about the bank that was written in 1991. So if you don't mind, I want to share that with you to kick off a little bit what we're talking about today. The Marblehead Bank Company was chartered in 1907, considered Marblehead in the mid to late 19th century, and immigrants were pouring into the area from Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Russia, Switzerland, Ireland, England, Holland, Italy, Sicily, France, and Germany. No matter how harsh the conditions were in Marblehead area, people felt fortunate to be here, for there was freedom and the opportunity for land and home ownership. Most men found hand labor in the Kelly Island Lime Company and transport quarries. Others engaged in farming or fishing commercially, while others entered the building trades or lake shipping. To serve the needs of a growing population came the churches, grocery stores, barber shops, saloons, once more numerous than the churches, lumber yard, overall factory, shoe store, dry goods store, cigar store, rooming houses, fruit packing houses, a school, post office, and a KILNT hospital. Hospital still stands. Do you know that over there by the belt over in downtown Marblehead? If you're looking back towards the lake, you can see the hospital still back there. The nearest banking services were in Port Clinton or Sandusky, at best a 1-hour trip away. Toledo was at least 2 hours away. The Ice Crusher, Golden Eagle, and later the American Eagle and Lakeside, captained by Fred G. Mangle, ran year-round and provided peninsula residents with a daily link to the Put-in-Bay, Middle Bass Islands, and Sandusky. Captain Mangle heard of the Marblehead's great need for a physician and was instrumental in encouraging his son-in-law, Dr. Aiden Bruce Jordan, to look over the area. Dr. Jordan began his practice here in 1892 and was active as an early Marblehead Bank director until his untimely death with the flu and the epidemic of 1921. Louis St. Marie was born on his father's farm in Marblehead in 1868. His parents, Octavius and Natalia St. Marie, had moved to Marblehead from Lake Prairie near Quebec, Canada in 1865. There is a picture on the table of Louis St. Marie and his parents. So feel free to and we'll see a few of those here in just a minute too. His father entered the service of David Alexander, and until he could buy a sum of his land, thereafter he farmed independently. Lewis was a carpenter by trade, and after finishing his apprenticeship, he traveled as a journeyman workman through the West for several years before returning to Marblehead. From 1892 to 1898, he was with the U.S. Life Saving Station crew. He was also busy engaged in contractor with DeWitt S. Johnson. L.W. Byington, an early bank director, provided the raw materials from his lumberyard in Lakeside. In 1894, Lewis bought land in Marblehead with the idea of improving Main Street. He built St. Marie buildings, which you can see a picture of right now and it's still standing today. He built the St. Marie buildings, which housed Ward's store, the barber shop, the KSC hall, which would eventually house the Marblehead Bank Company 13 years later. In early 1900, prominent members of the community began meeting to discuss the feasibility of having a bank in Marblehead. The citizens determined that the need for a bank was great. There was sufficient interest in capital. At that time, you had to have $25,000 to start a bank. And you don't think that's much today, but back then, there was a lot of money to do it. So they pooled all the money together for the local community and started the Marblehead Banking Company. Space was available in the St. Marie building. As you can see on the corner of the building over here, let me see if I can get this pointed out here a little bit. Right in this area here, this was actually the area where the bank was established, along with some other stores. This is actually the place where Structured Enterprises is today. If you go downtown, you see the St. Marie building.
Thanks for the plug, Bill.
There you go. We'll talk later. On the top floor here, which now houses the offices of Structured Enterprises, was at one time a ballroom. And they had dances and all kinds of fun things that went around. That was actually the center hub of the community. Everybody got together around it and had some fun times. So the Marblehead Banking Company, the word company was officially omitted in 1960, was organized as a result of these meetings, and a charter was granted from the State Banking Department of Ohio on March 6, 1907. The first stockholders meeting was held May 11, 1907, with Louis St. Marie elected the first president. He served as president for 28 years. The Marblehead Bank remains in the St. Marie building for 50 years. On June 3, 1957, the Marblehead Bank opened its doors at 709 West Main Street with Ottawa County's first drive-in banking service. So we'll talk about that in just a second too, but that was the initial article that came out about the history of the Marblehead Bank. Again, a group of people in the community getting together, talking about it, pooling their money together, and really one of the earliest community banks in this area. Marblehead Bank has a designation now of being 111 years old and never closed during any of the bank crises. So our bank is known up in the North Coast as one of the longest continuously operating banks in the state of Ohio. So, and again, that's because of the dedication and the desire of the local people to have that community represented with a good local bank. Then, back in a few years ago, we had our 100th anniversary at the bank, and so we had another article that was printed up in by a local historian, which will remain nameless. Actually, I joined the bank in 1992, and when I came in here, we were a smaller bank, about a $30 million bank. We only had $3 million in loans back then, and we only had just the main structure that you'll see shortly here on 709 West Main Street. We had no branches, we didn't have an ATM. It was just that one building. And we had some pretty funky hours. I mean, I think we were closed on Wednesdays, and we were open Saturdays until like 4 or 5. So it was rather an unusual set of hours that we designed at that time. But since that time, and we got together as a group of officers and directors and employees, and we've done a lot to contribute to the community since 1992. And we'll be sharing some of that with you today, too. So looking at what was written about the Marblehead Bank then when they celebrated their 100th anniversary, again, it reiterates that in 1907, a group of Peninsula restaurant residents met and decided their growing community should have the facilities of a local bank. The nearest bank was over an hour away in Port Clinton, Ohio. The Marblehead Banking Company was organized as a result of the meeting, and a charter was granted by the State Banking Department of Ohio, as I said before, on March 6, 1907. The first stockholders meeting was again held on May 11, 1907, where Louis St. Marie was the bank's first president. Again, this is a picture of Louis. Just a few years ago, we had the whole St. Marie family back in Marblehead for the Perch Festival, and we had them in the parade, and they all got a chance to celebrate their heritage in the bank. So Louis was actually the very first president of the Marblehead Bank. Mr. St. Marie held the capacity for 26 years and was succeeded by George B. Hall. Anybody remember that name for George B. Hall? I know you do. George was a president then in 1954 and held that position for 32 years before Clifford Wallen was appointed in 1986. David B. King succeeded Mr. Wallen in 1992. And that's when I returned to the bank. And then the bank's current president, myself, took over and succeeded Mr. King in 2011. So, slide here. Let's not get that. But the other officers at the Marblehead Bank I'd like to introduce to you right now is Lori Fletcher. She's our AVP and branch manager at the bank. Patricia Pipa. Patricia joined our bank from out of high school. She's been with the bank. By the way, Lori's been with our bank almost 40 years, I think. Patty's been with the bank over 35. She joined right out of high school. And she's been with us and worked her way up from teller all the way now to Vice President of Operations. She's done a beautiful job. Deb Stevens joined the bank a year before I did in 1991. And then Pete came aboard about 6 or 7 years ago. He's our loan officer now. So we have a really good, strong group of local people that are still operating in the Marblehead community. Our chairman of the board is Tom Lane. Tom's here today, so he's been here with us since 1969. And we have a real connection with Lakeside, because Tom, of course, is a longtime Lakeside resident. And his brother Bill used to be on our board of directors. He was a longtime Marblehead resident. And Bill's wife, Phyllis, then took Bill's place when Bill passed away. And she was on our board for quite a while. So we still have some connections with Lakeside. Arnie Boldecker, I think some of you may know him. He was a Lakesider. And John's family had some connection with Lakeside. And had a real interest. Why don't you tell them just a second, tell them the story about how your family came to Lakeside. Because I thought that was interesting.
This is about you, Bill.
I know. You're just such a good talker. So.
Okay, gee, thanks. You make a habit of doing this to me.
I do?
My family is originally from the Pittsburgh area, and due to a career change, a job change, my dad ended up moving to Akron. While we were there, my mother got named as the delegate from our church to come to Lakeside for the conference. And that's how my parents discovered Lakeside. And so she brought a couple of us kids up with her. We spent the week. And I remember going home, I think I was probably in 5th grade at the time. And I remember her telling my dad, you have to come see this place. And so he did. They made a trip back up here, fell in love with it, obviously. Bought a summer cottage the very next year from John Curtis. So if you remember that name. I think my dad paid $5,000 for the cottage at the corner of 2nd and Lynn. Boy, if you had $100 grand in your pocket back then. But anyway, we summered here for 5 seasons, and then in the summer of 1976, my dad had the opportunity to move here for work, and the whole family came with him then. So I wasn't born here, but I got here as quickly as I could.
And we're not going to mention the fact that he's a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Well,
which is understandable. So anyways, in addition to our chairman right now, Tom, and John, of course, you met, Jackie Bird, who is the mayor of Marblehead, she's also on our board of directors. Judy Smoke, I don't know if any of you have met Judy. Judy is what we call our princess of all things of donation, because she's very into the raising funds, and she helps a lot of the food pantries and things like that. So we're very, very lucky to have her on our board. Tyler Brown, anybody ever met Tyler? Tyler is one of the owners of Brown's Dairy. And of course myself. So our board is very much involved in the community and very much interested in the Marblehead Lakeside communities. So in Marblehead Bank, the word company was officially dropped in 1960. That's the story in that too, because when I first came here, I found this big box of yardsticks, right? It said the Marblehead Banking Company on it. I said, man, that's really cool. And I found like, I don't know, 30 of them. So I took it down to the Perch Festival just to lay it on a table so people could grab them. And there was people jumping on that table, and they were fighting each other over these stupid yardsticks. And I didn't realize that yardsticks were so popular in Marblehead. So we don't have any yardsticks left anymore. They're all gone. But we did bring you something today. So it's, again, as I said before, the same rebuilding is now occupied by the Dr. Enterprises. And that's the front of the bank building at that time. Again, I can help you out here. John Danchinson is the guy in the white shirt. Truman Carnicombe, he's the guy in the suit. Josephine Monach, person up there in the sweater. And then Barb Hoblob. I imagine a lot of you people probably met Barb from time to time. But these are some of the people that were employed with the bank over the years since we began. Let's go to the next slide here. This is what the inside of the bank looked like. I was talking to John before this, the meeting today. He was telling me that they found a lot of that old metal roof ceiling tiles in the building after they took